Okay, welcome to the library. It's the at-home edition. We're so thrilled to have Virginia Kantra here tonight. She's gonna be, if you guys can mute all of your microphones, that would be awesome. I might be able to do that. Anyway, so we're thrilled to have her. She's gonna talk about her modern retelling of Meg and Jo. You can see my Little Woman poster I have back here. I also want to tell you how you can get a free copy of Little Woman. You can go to the General Reference Desk. We have a bunch of it. It's this beautiful paperback edition. We also have a flyer that you would get to go along with that. It tells about all of our Little Woman events and activities. On the back, it has a little quilt tracker. So if you do all 12 of the activities, you get to put the stickers on, take a photo of your finished quilt, and then you can be entered into a drawing for Little Woman themed prizes, including some copies of Meg and Jo that we've purchased. If you want to purchase a signed copy of Meg and Jo, Virginia's kindly given us some book plates that we can put in the book. You just need to email the Printed Garden and they will get a copy for you. And that's all on our website, oremreads.orem.org. You can find all of this info. We do have one kind of cool event coming up on Monday, October 12th. We have a Little Women Trivia Night through Kahoot. It should be really fun. And the winners will receive some prizes like a copy of Meg and Jo. We have the Meg and Jo mug that you provided with us, Virginia. That's really cute. So you'll definitely want to sign up on Eventbrite to do that as well. And I cannot forget to thank our sponsors. This is part of the Utah Humanities Book Festival, and we get a grant every year. Every fall they have a festival. And this year the sponsors are the George S. and Dolores Doré Eccles Foundation, the Salt Lake City Arts Council, the Salt Lake County Zoo, Arts and Parks Fund, Summit County RAP, Weber County RAMP, the Charles Redd Center for Western Studies, the King's English Bookshop, Weller Book Works, the National Endowment for the Humanities, the National Endowment for the Arts, Catalyst, and Slug Magazine. So thank you to our sponsors. We won't be able to do this without them. Yay! And then let me introduce you to Virginia. Virginia Kantra is the New York Times bestselling author of 30 books of women's fiction, contemporary romance, paranormal romance, and romantic suspense. Her stories have won numerous awards, including 2 Romance Writers of America Awards, 2 National Reader's Choice Awards, and she's also received 10 nominations for the Romance Writers of America Awards. Virginia lives in North Carolina with her high school sweetheart. She has 3 mostly adult children, and it sounds like she's a great speaker. She regularly offers writing workshops, and she loves talking with readers. So we are excited to talk with her. She's going to tell us a little bit about her book coming up next year, Beth and Amy. It's the modern retelling of the 2 younger March sisters. I'm really excited to read that as well. So I'm excited for that sneak peek, and take it over, Virginia.
Thank you so much, Holly. I am so grateful to be part of the Orem Reads project this year. And I'm so grateful to libraries and librarians generally, because right now you are essential workers. Right now, more than ever, we are stuck at home. We are socially distanced. We are looking to be entertained and informed, craving connection. We need distraction. So what do we need? We need stories in our lives. We need stories to escape. We need stories to travel. We need stories about families pulling together in tough times. We need stories about strong women who use their voices, where good triumphs and justice is done. We need stories with happy endings. We need no social distancing. We need stories that bring us together and that show us who we are and the values that we hold in common. Effectively, we need Little Women. Now, it's no surprise in a pandemic that we're turning to comfort reads. What we remember about, when I was a kid, my mom would take me to the library once a week, and I met the author Lloyd Alexander there. And I actually credit that for a large part of why I wanted to become a writer. What we remember when we read these stories isn't just the original text, but it's who we were and where we were at the time that we read them. I will always hear Huckleberry Finn in my mother's voice as she sat in the corner of the room that I shared with my sister and read to us. I will always associate Peter Beagle's The Last Unicorn with the smell of Lysol and dust and a borrowed bookshelf in a flat in London. Little Women, for me, is the wrinkles on my childhood bedspread, and it's the smell of lilacs outside my window. With these memories come the emotions. They come the humor and the yearning and the warmth. Now, as readers, we turn to stories for comfort and adventure, to escape our childhood maybe, or maybe to understand it. One of my favorite quotes of all time is C.S. Lewis's, "Once a king or queen in Narnia, always a king or queen in Narnia," or Sherwood, or Mount Olympus, Hogwarts, Prince Edward Island, Middle-earth, or Pemberley. There's magic in those names, right? The stories that we love live on inside us, and they're putting down these very deep roots. They're nourished by our imagination and our experience, and they are strengthened by repetition. They become, these stories, these comfort reads, they become part of us. They infuse our voices. Little Women is a book like this. I was 10 years old when my grandmother gave my sister and me an abridged copy of Little Women. She probably figured it was an appropriate story for girls, which it is, because unlike the female characters in a lot of other books I was reading at that age, Meg, Jo, Beth, and Amy aren't sidekicks. They aren't somebody's sweetheart. They aren't the token girl. They are the heroes of their own story. The main boy in the book, Laurie, is actually the onlooker to their action. He's always looking over the fence. He's always looking longingly at their window. They invite him into their story. They're the ones doing all the cool stuff, right? Writing newspapers and acting in plays and having snowball fights. And he wants to be part of that. The girls are the heroes. The original Little Women has everything. It's a family saga. It's a coming of age story, and it's a romance. The first half ends because it was originally published, and I'm sure that with the job that the library has done on education with the story, you know this, it was published in 2 volumes, set 3 years apart. And in fact, Meg and Jo and Beth and Amy is being published in 2 volumes, set 3 years apart. But the first half of the book, which is Little Women, the Little Women we know, is, yeah, okay, good. My video just cut out and I went, am I gone? Okay, so the original Little Women has all these other things, and the first half of the book ends with the marriage of Meg to kind, solid John Brooke. And the second half, which was originally published in a 2nd volume titled Good Wives, thrilled my preteen heart with the will they or won't they courtship of Jo and Laurie. But the fact is, the book is about girls doing interesting things. They get jobs, they go to parties, they fight with and support each other. It is 152 years old. It has never gone out of print. There are 3 new film versions. There's the BBC miniseries that aired year before last. There is the modern movie Retelling from September 2018, which I think is on Netflix now. And there, of course, is Greta Gerwig's wonderful version that came out last Christmas. My own retelling is women's fiction, with the Meg sisters pursuing their dreams in their 20s, what I think of now as a contemporary coming of age. Now, if you grew up as a fan of Louisa May Alcott or of Christian Bale in the 1994 movie version of Little Women, You may believe that the story is perfect just the way it is. So what was I thinking? Why would I retell this beloved classic? Well, part of it is that I changed. I think I mentioned that the first time I read the book, I was 10. And I did not know it at the time, but my grandmother had given us an abridged copy, which I didn't know even what that really was. But it was basically the good parts your average 10-year-old's going to get right into all those things version of the story. I was in high school when I read, and I'm now going to do that thing you're not supposed to do in a Zoom meeting. I'm going to leave the screen because I want to show you something. I want to play show and tell. This is my copy of Little Women. It is not abridged. It is, unfortunately, at this point, the poor thing, falling apart and greatly dog-eared and post-it noted and has things in it. And it is significantly longer than the version that I read when I was 10. When I was in high school, I was surprised by how much richer and deeper the book was than I remembered. And then I read it again in college, and I went, wow, a lot of the things that these characters are dealing with, I am dealing with. This coming of the conflicts which seem so modern, about how do I do what I love and still make a living, became very significant. And then I became a young mother, and I read it again. And there were whole other parts about Meg negotiating her marriage with John that I'd never even noticed when I was growing up. And now these were the parts that were fascinating to me. So one of the things is I changed, and the book changed. And then it's also true that times have changed. So Little Women is more than a beloved book for girls. It's more even than a great American novel. For me, Little Women is part of my personal history. It's one of those things that tell us who we are. Now, there is a huge challenge when you are retelling a book like Little Women. First of all, you need to honor the original text. And if nothing else, my showing you my messy Exhibit A shows that I've at least spent some time with the original text. But you also have to respect that many readers are going to bring your own feelings and your own memories of reading the book or watching the movie to their story. And I get that because that's totally what I did. When I was little, I have one sister, and we did the things that sisters do. We shared a room and we whispered secrets and we fought and we made families of paper dolls and we ran up and down playing Great Escape in the dark with flashlights. And how we survived our childhood, I sometimes do not know. But there were only two of us. And I wanted to go live with the Marches because there were more of them. And I really liked that. And then I remember identifying so much with book-loving Jo, scribbling in her room, kind of hiding in a corner. I wanted to have a pet rat. I did have a hamster, not the same. I wanted all that stuff. And then I remember when I reread it as a young mother, and I'm with 3 kids under the age of 5. I don't know if any of you can relate, but that was it. And I totally winced for poor Meg, struggling at home with her twin toddlers. So the book became personal to me because of the the connection that I felt with the characters. Now, as a writer, you take on a book like that, I'm not sure you can ever live up to that level of expectation. You can only be true to yourself, to your own experience, to your own emotions. And that's pretty much what I'm trying to do. You have to be authentic. There's a part in Meg and Jo where Bear says to Jo, tell your story. And that effectively in Meg and Jo is what I did, is I told the story of Little Women, but I'm also telling my story, which is one of the reasons I sent it in North Carolina, which is where I've raised my family. The other reason to do that is because I do want to have a word about the setting. Little Women is such an important part of Concord, and the Alcott's experience of the Transcendentalist movement and major figures like Emerson and Thoreau and Louisa May Alcott's own father, who was a very well-known educator, that New England imbues the story of Little Women. And there's definitely a risk in moving it to the other half of the country. But the reason for doing that is that another important part of the story to me is Mr. March's experience with the war. And one thing that you become very aware of if you live in North Carolina is the importance of the military bases in the state. And because I wanted to talk about that experience of the community that has an awareness of war and service, that actually fit well with my North Carolina setting. So that's what I did. I set the story in North Carolina, and I took all my love of Little Women and what it has meant to me at different points of my life, and I brought it into my story. And what that means is that some of Meg and Jo is a deep dive into my own family, which is something that I kind of have to deny when they read this, or, you know, did you mean to do that? And that whole thing with the, did you, or is that daddy? And then you're like, oh no. I mean, you have to kind of, there has to be a certain plausible deniability. But the other thing that I tried to do is use some of my research on Louisa May Alcott herself. So the Mr. March in Meg and Jo is a lot less like the kindly remote Mr. March of Little Women, and a lot more like Louisa's real life father, Branson Alcott. He was a revered educator. He was a renowned scholar and speaker. He was also an absolutely awful provider and husband. Because Louisa May Alcott was her father's sole financial support for most of his life, I think that she was extremely gentle in her treatment of him in her book, and I did not feel the same compunction. So I think that there were things that creative choices I made based on my autobiography. There are creative choices that I made based on Louisa May Alcott's autobiography. But I think that the joy of doing a retelling is that it can help you, it can point you back to the original. It can give you new ways, fresh ways, I hope fun, relatable ways to look at them. At the heart of the book, of course, are the sisters. What's wonderful about Meg, Jo, Beth, and Amy is that it's all about the role models. They're so distinct. From page one, they have these really vibrant, clear personalities. There's responsible Meg, there's independent Jo, there's shy Beth, there's self-absorbed Amy. Of course, I wanted to be Jo. I think all writers want to be Jo. Did you guys take, if you haven't taken the Orem Library personality quiz on which March sister are you. It is the best. And I'm sure that there are links all over the place. And I took it and I was super excited because I got Amy this time. Now, the reason I'm super excited I got Amy is that seriously, I almost always get Jo, and I just turned in Beth and Amy's book. And so like, if I got Amy, that means it's like, yes, I'm still in Amy mode. And so that was really fun. But I did want to be Jo, and I thought I was Jo, and then I figured out that oh wait, no, I'm also Meg, and oh wait, I'm also Amy, clearly. And I had the most trouble probably embracing my inner Beth, because when I talk about the girls, right? What are you doing? You look for those really key scenes, those key moments, those key experiences, those key things that they do. What does Beth do? Well, Beth dies, right? I mean, it's like, Beth is the good girl who dies. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. But so what does it look like to bring the March sisters into the now? And I know that some of you have read this book and maybe some of you have not. So I'm going to read a very short excerpt for those of you who may not, so that you can go, okay, here are the March girls grown up in contemporary North Carolina. Trey had brought flowers and beer and Mr. Lawrence wine. Our parents were not big drinkers, but John took a beer and passed the rest around. Captain Lewis opened the wine, pouring Pinot Noir into red plastic cups. That part, just as an aside, is definitely autobiographical. At least all the activity covered the awkwardness of seeing Trey again. Now, Trey in this retelling is Theodore James Lawrence III. Mom and Meg both exclaimed over the big bouquet of sunflowers and roses. I'll just get these in water, Meg said as Trey enveloped me in a hug. Well, everybody was hugging everybody. I turned my head aware we had an audience. Amy looked away as his kiss landed somewhere above my ear. He smelled the same, like bergamot and starch. The only 20-something guy I knew who sent his shirts to the dry cleaners or could afford to. Hey, Trey, I mumbled against his shoulder. Jo, he backed to arm's length, still holding both my hands. You look amazing. He did too. His hair had grown, dark curls tumbling around his face, very Lord Byron. Bedhead, I used to tease back in the days before we'd been to bed together. Now I said nothing. He ran his finger along the strap of my borrowed apron. This is a new look for you. I jerked back a step. I'm giving Mom a hand in the kitchen. Jo made almost the entire Thanksgiving dinner this year, Mom said. She's a chef now. Trey gave me a speculative look. Really? Prep cook, I said. I had been let go from the newspaper less than a month after our last fight. I don't need this, I remembered yelling at him. He'd glared at me, sulky and gorgeous. You mean you don't need me? I didn't want to need him. I could not be his instant family, his next step to achieving manhood. So I turned him down, turned him away. Again. I tightened my ponytail. Speaking of cooking, I left a pot of water on the stove. I'll take care of it, Mom said. My parents had always welcomed strays, on the farm and around the table. I admired their easy hospitality, my father's determination that no soldier should go hungry on our national holiday of Thanksgiving. But honestly, what was he thinking about springing guests on Mom an hour before dinner? Not that I would have noticed a year ago. I got it, Mom, I said. Daisy wriggled down from the stranger's lap. I help Auntie Jo, she announced. DJ lurched for me, holding out his little arms. Oh, I don't think, Meg began. Absolutely. I hefted my nephew onto my hip, smiled at my niece. You can, what? Toddlers had terrible knife skills. Put out some more napkins and forks, okay? While Daisy and DJ trotted importantly back and forth from the dining room, I grabbed butter and cheese to make a roux. There's no more room at the table, Meg said, bustling in. I told John to set up TV trays. Beth slipped in from the dining room. I can eat in the kitchen. Ha! Amy came in for another bottle of wine. You just don't want to sit next to Aunt Fee. Beth half smiled. I wondered how my shy, performance-averse sister would manage if she ever actually got a singing part in a show. But she didn't have a bad idea. No making conversation with bearded strangers, no great Aunt Josephine, no tray. Why don't the four of us eat in here, I suggested. It would be like old times. We're a little old to sit at the kiddie table, Meg pointed out. Although it does sound nice, Beth said. As long as we have alcohol. Amy carried the open bottle out to the living room. I opened the pantry. What can I do? Beth said. I'm fine, I said. Meg returned carrying a stack of dirty cups. You know, it wouldn't kill you to ask for help every once in a while. I snorted. Look who's talking. She's right, Beth said. Fine, grate me some cheese. Aunt Fee wants to know what time we're eating, Meg said. I threw a look at the kitchen timer. 10 minutes? Great. Meg stooped to retrieve DJ from under the kitchen table. And we need more chips. I'll get them, Beth said. She collided with Trey in the doorway. He steadied her, rescuing the chips from spilling. Beth blushed and thanked him, ducking under his arm to carry the bowl to the living room. It struck me, not for the first time, how good he was with her. And then, definitely for the first time, how good she would be for him. How good they could be for each other. He would take care of her. She would admire him. Maybe Trey had fallen for the wrong sister. Huh. Get out, I said. I have work to do. He held up his hands in an I come in peace gesture. Come on, Joe, don't be like that. He flashed his boyish, ingratiating smile. I've missed you. The words, the familiar smile went straight to my heart. I grabbed the pasta off the stove and drained it in the sink, raising a cloud of steam. My cheeks flushed from the heat. Or maybe that was annoyance. I missed you too, I admitted. He propped his lean hips against the counter, hanging around the way he always did, teasing, distracting, in my way. I hefted the pot. Move your ass, Lawrence. He shifted a few inches to avoid getting burned. So you're a cook now? Among other things, I banged the pot onto an empty burner, adjusted the heat under the roux. I write a food blog. He nodded. Hungry. I was pleased, surprised. Hungry, taking a bite out of the Big Apple, was the name of my blog. You read it? Your sister said something about it. He plucked a shred of cheese from the bowl. Good. What happened to the newspaper gig? I slapped his hand away. The paper downsized. I was let go. You didn't tell me. I shrugged. You were ignoring my texts. Anyway, I figured it was better if you didn't know. Better for what? Your pride? He had never understood my determination to stand on my own 2 feet, never accepted my decision to move to New York in the first place. I looked up from the cheese sauce to meet his gaze. Our friendship. Our eyes locked. He smiled a little crookedly. Fair enough. So that's what it looks like to me to bring sisters into the future. What I did not expect when I started was how important the character of Abigail March, their mom, would become. Remember how I said every time I read it, as I'm getting older, as my own life experience has changed, as my own emotions about things change, my experience of the story changes. So in the first book, to be quite honest, my biggest thing was I needed to get rid of Marmee. She's so good. She's so strong. The girls need to each find their own paths to adulthood, which they do with varying degrees of success. But the fact is, there's a reason why in Jane Eyre and lots of other novels, the female protagonists tend to be orphans. If you got your mom at your back, you're never in as bad a shape as you would be otherwise. You never have to do it all if you got your mom behind you. And Abigail March is one of those great moms, which is why she had to spend most of Meg and Jo flat on her back. Because I needed my girls to grow up. And as long as they can turn to mom, they don't have to the same extent. What is it that they have to learn with or without their mom? Well, the original March sisters are not limited to the choice between marrying well or becoming governesses. I mean, this isn't Pride and Prejudice, right? But they definitely are still facing the gender constraints of their time. And Jo in particular chafes against the restrictions placed on women. Amy navigates them. We have more career options now, certainly. We have different sexual pressures, but we are all still struggling with gender roles and expectations. Those conflicts in Little Women feel very modern. There's family responsibilities and sibling rivalry. There's work, there's motherhood. There's that tension I talked about earlier between the creative desire and the need to make money. Little Women gives us the chance. The characters of Meg and Jo and Beth and Amy give us ways to explore different paths forward. Even when, to say, okay, here are my dreams and here's reality. Louisa May Alcott resisted her readers' desire to marry Jo off, but we are invested in Jo's choices anyway. Will she be a literary spinster? Are we Team Laurie? Are we Team Bear? And that story invites us to think about our own desires and our own choices. Now, when I was growing up, Laurie was the boy next door, and Jo was his best friend. And of course they were supposed to be together. But somewhere that changed. A lot has been made out of Louisa May Alcott's desire to keep Jo a spinster, and the phrase of hers that is often used as a letter, I think she wrote to her own sister, where she was tempted to make a funny match for Jo with the professor. But Louisa May Alcott had a rather limited love life, okay? So she had very safe crushes on her father's friends. I believe she actually sang in German outside Ralph Waldo Emerson's window. Somebody's laughing, so you did not know this story? Yes, she serenaded Ralph Waldo Emerson outside his window. There's an amazing, wonderful book by Jane Langton called The Diamond in the Window, which is set in Concord, in which the romantic young girl weds the bust of Louisa May Alcott in her uncle's library to the bust of Ralph Waldo Emerson. I think Thoreau presides over the wedding, the bust of Thoreau. So that's a good one. Look for The Diamond in the Window by Jane Langton. She definitely, Louisa May Alcott was exploring the idea of companionate marriage. She also had a crush. When she was 33 years old, she went to Europe for the first time, and she met a 20-year-old Polish guy with musical skills, whom she had a somewhat maternal relationship with. His name was Ladislas Wisniewski, but she called him Laddie, and I'm going to too, because it's way easier to say. And then the other relationship that Louisa knew was her parents' marriage, which was very complicated. I would strongly recommend you watch the PBS documentary on Louisa May Alcott if you want to have an understanding. Or there's a wonderful book called Marmee and Louisa, which talks about the influence of Abigail as a thinker and as a worker on her daughter Louisa. Her father gets a lot of credit for inspiring her, but her mother was actually incredibly formative. Okay, so that's Louisa May Alcott's experience of love and marriage. This is one area of those areas where my experience and perceptions are different. I have been married longer than Louisa May Alcott was alive. And one of the things that I have come to really appreciate is that the choices, some of the choices Louisa made, which is like, okay, so Amy, we'll talk briefly about Amy. When you first read Louisa May Alcott, or you even see the movie, and Amy burns Jo's manuscript, you hate her. And I did, and you should, because she burned Jo's manuscript. But I'm also a younger sister, and I have come to understand that sibling love and rivalry are closely related, and that we're not all one thing. We can be made up of different parts. And I understand that there's a possibility that Louisa may have been a little jealous of her sister May, the juried artist who went on to have a happy married, well, until she died in childbirth, as one did. Right, I know. But there are reasons for Amy to be with, why Amy is a good match for the somewhat indulged Theodore James Lawrence III. And there is a good reason why she deserves an actual equal as a partner in her life. So my attitudes towards Amy have certainly changed, and my attitudes towards Beth have changed. I think I mentioned that Amy presents a particular challenge because she is disliked. Beth presents a particular challenge because she's good. There was the good dead girl is kind of a Victorian staple. So if you look at the Lady of Shalott, you know, kind of floating down, singing, drowning, or, oh wait, that's Ophelia, but it doesn't really matter because they all did. If you look at young women in the 19th century, they died. Children died. Women died. So Louisa May Alcott's own sister died. There are lots of dead people. Old Mr. Lawrence's granddaughter dies. Aunt Fee has a daughter who dies. You don't even really, they're practically wallpaper. You don't even necessarily recognize it, how many women die in Little Women. So what I had to do when I thought about Beth is, what are the dangers young women face now? Beth negates herself. She becomes the Victorian, what they call the angel of the household. She loses her identity in service to others. And it was a compelling, I didn't figure out what was going on with her till I was more than halfway through writing her book. She doesn't want you to notice her. And I had to pay very careful attention to who she was. And that actually involved going to places in my own life I wasn't completely comfortable with. And I'm really still waiting to hear what my editor thinks about that, because I turned the book in about 2 weeks ago. Now, a much more comfortable place for me to go, quite honestly, in this next book, was Abigail herself, was Marmee. In Meg and Jo, she's a static character, but in Beth and Amy, she is a woman. Her voice kept calling to me, and my experience and my emotions again became part of that narrative. When it comes to Abigail, I have things to say. So you are now getting a piece of Beth and Amy that I'm not sure my editor has read yet. When the goat Naomi bolted for the kids' enclosure, I wrestled her back. Milking time, girl, you'll see your babies in the morning. Seems to me she'd be glad for the break. I looked up in surprise. Dan didn't talk much. Behind his beard, it was hard to know what he was thinking most of the time. Hard to argue with mother instinct. I gave Naomi a rub. You got kids, Dan? Nope. Which was the closest we'd come to a personal conversation since Ash invited him to Thanksgiving dinner 3 years ago. Another homeless vet needing a berth for the holidays. Wanted some once, he volunteered, surprising me. Wife wanted to wait. You're married? He seemed so young, but then I'd been a mother at 21. Divorced. I'm sorry. He shrugged. What are you going to do? I was gone a lot. Like Ash. The thought popped up, irresistible, unwelcome. Afghanistan? Iraq. Also like Ash. She changed while I was away, she said. We herded the lady goats toward the milking parlor. She changed, I repeated. It was really none of my business, but he'd been upfront about his PTSD issues when I hired him. A short nod. Reckon we both did. That, too, was familiar. Opposites attract, my mother used to say, and for Ash and me, it was true. He was thought, and I was feeling. He was cool, and I was hot. When we were younger, I found his deep reserve mysterious, his mental preoccupation a challenge. I'd taken pride in being the one who could provide him with connection and comfort. But after his third deployment, he had changed, not merely distant, but gone. And maybe the fact that I took charge while he was away made it easy for him to go, harder for him to come back again and take his place in the family. The goats clattered up the ramp. Deployments are hard on everybody, I said. Yeah. Plus, she cheated, so another shrug. Oh. I caught myself sneaking glances at Dan as he latched the goats into their stations and scattered grain in the trough. He wasn't handsome like Ash, but good-looking in a rough sort of way, and kind. I'm sorry. You spend a lot of time apologizing. He might have been smiling, hard to tell with the beard. Sorry, I said, joking. Yep, definite smile that time. I went down the line, squirting, checking, wiping teats as Dan hooked up the cups on the milking machine. 6 goats at a time, feed, wipe, milk, sanitize, repeat. We were almost done when I heard a car, Amy back from Oak Hill. She jerked open the trunk of the car, hauled out a familiar-looking duffel, and dumped it on the gravel. My stomach sank. Dan followed my gaze out the door. I got the milking if you want to. Thanks. I wiped my hands on the teat towel and went out. What's all this? Amy reached for a suitcase. Dad's stuff. I see that, I said. What are you doing with it? She lifted her chin. Aunt Fee said I should ask you. Anger tightened my throat. At Fee. At Ash. For 30 years, I'd been the good preacher's wife, the good military spouse. I handled the questions, deployments, and disappointments, the time Ash missed dinner or Christmas, the fact that there wasn't any money for summer camps or college. Don't bother your father. Your father is doing important work. We need to be strong for your father. 3 years after I kicked him out, he was still missing the important discussions, still leaving the explanations to me. So Abby's got things to say, and I've got things I want to say about them. Ultimately, though, Little Women, Meg and Jo, Beth and Amy, is the story about families pulling together in tough times. And those are stories that we really need. When it was first published, the country was divided in the wake of the Civil War. Mr. March is away serving in the Union Army, and the family is facing hardship at home. Right now, I think that we need these stories about families. There's a line that runs through Meg and Jo. Whatever happens, we have each other, that the girls use when their dad is away in Iraq and at key crisis points. And I think to remind ourselves of that in as many ways as we can is a wonderful thing. So I am looking at the time and I have to stop talking so that I can take questions. So I'm going to, and thank you very much for being here.
Virginia, can you see there's a couple questions already in the chat. Do you want me to send them to you again?
Let me see if I can, yeah, let me see if I can open that up better.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, all I see is, why is Beth a country singer?
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know they're only going to me, so I'll send them to you.
Okay, or if you just want, if everybody can hear us both.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I can.
Ask questions and I'll answer.
Okay. So Alan B says, why did you include Jo sleeping with Laurie? It seems so out of character for Christian girls who don't commit adultery.
I can understand that that is a sticking point for a lot of people. When you do a contemporary retelling, you have to speak to the experience of a lot of, to the world that you know. And in the world that I know, many young women that I encounter are experiencing their sexuality, whether it's even as they do their best to follow the tenets of their faith. So I did feel that by making the girls preachers' daughters, that put a particular obligation and a burden on them. They obviously do not always live up to their parents' teachings, but I feel that they do their best to live moral lives, and by sometimes making mistakes, I think that it gives the readers an opportunity to decide what choices they might make the same or might make differently.
Okay, awesome. I'm feeling like if you guys want to unmute your mics, you can, but we just got another question. Yay. How you write about the restaurant is so authentic. Did you research this, or how did you come by this knowledge?
Okay, so I do spend a lot of time, I did do a lot of research. Also, my husband owns a coffee shop. So I spend a lot of time in the back room, and we're a lot of things he was able to clue me in on. I did not actually ever work in a restaurant myself, but I'm so pleased that that felt authentic to you. It was certainly a lot of the joy, and I can tell you that a lot of the food that gets made in that book has been made here at home.
Okay, do you want to answer the why is Beth a country singer?
Why is Beth a country singer? Okay, so I mentioned before that it was actually kind of important for me to get Marmee off stage, so that Meg and Jo could come fully into their strengths as adult women. The other issue that I had is that this book is 400 pages long, and Beth and Amy is about the same length. If I had had 5 years to write the one book, and it was going to be, my publisher would have been willing to publish it as an 800-page volume, and then y'all would have been willing to get it for the library. I mean, we could have done it as a single volume, but it actually does follow the original Little Women to have it be in 2 volumes set 3 years apart. So Meg and Jo takes place in 2016. Beth and Amy takes place in 2019. I wanted the girls present but I didn't necessarily need them in the moment. So there were times when it was just kind of nice to go, yes, yes, there are Beth and Amy. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. They'll be back, you know. So I kind of wanted to get her off stage, as it were. What do we know about Beth? We know that she's shy. We know she struggles in school. We know that she's really very talented, musically the most talented of the sisters. And so I thought, okay, I'm in North Carolina. She's a vocal major at UNC Greensboro. And then I thought, let's give her Branson. It seemed to work, making her a songwriter. There's an extent to which Beth and Amy are versions of Meg and Jo. You see it in the way that they Amy is Mini Jo and Beth is Mini Meg. They actually both contain both some of their sisters' strengths, but also a flaw that needs to be developed. I thought that by taking Beth away from the support of her family, and remember, I'm talking later about the pressures that young women face now. I thought by taking her away from the support of her family and putting her in a high stress performance environment, I was both being more true, because there aren't a lot of women who stay at home simply taking care of their families until they marry or die. And so giving her professional aspirations, and yet also putting her in a situation that would put pressure on her as a character that then I could exploit in the next book, was very desirable. So I thought, okay, she can be a singer-songwriter. So that's why Beth is a singer-songwriter.
That's awesome. Okay, next question. Other than Little Women, what book inspired you the most?
Oh my goodness. I was a big reader of fantasy, and I kind of, when I made that quote earlier about once a king or queen in Narnia, always a king or queen in Narnia, even though those British school children, go on these amazing adventures, what they really are is they're very ordinary kids. The March sisters are ordinary girls whose lives are interesting because they live them with intention. And I think that I really loved the Narnia Chronicles because you had ordinary kids who are forced by extraordinary circumstances into becoming extraordinary, into living lives of intention, into making choices. And those are always the stories that really spoke to me. I did not read the Harry Potter books until I was older and had children, and was reading the Harry Potter books actually with my son, my older son, our older son. And but I think those would have been the Narnia books were my Harry Potter books. Those were the books I grew up on that really informed my thinking and my heart.
Awesome. Sorry, it's hard to keep up with this. We're getting some questions now. So Dana says on page 150, there's a quote that reads, "I am myself, whatever they choose to see." By the end of the book, it seemed to relate to so many of the characters as their veneers were taken off and we learn who they have become. Did you think this too and plan this?
Thank you for saying that. A lot of that's really thoughtful. And well, of course, part of what I'm responding to there is in as inexpert a way as I can. Eric's experience as a Black man in America. He is himself, whatever people choose to see. But it's part of the discussion that is very important between Amy and Jo when they're actually talking about those other fictional sisters in Pride and Prejudice. And they're talking about, well, you know, we tend to do this. There's the smart one and the pretty one and the responsible one, and we put ourselves in these boxes, and we are defined to a certain extent by our birth families. And yet at some point, we have to decide to what extent we're going to embrace and draw strength from those familial identities, and to what extent we outgrow them and need to grow beyond them. So when I wrote that in particular, I was thinking about Eric, and Dana, thank you so much for that thoughtful read. But I think that it is a theme of that book, and it's a theme of the next book as well. This sense of self-image, and how our family identities both can make us stronger and hold us back.
Oh. I love Dana's hearts that she's been holding up. They're very cute.
Oh, thank you. I can't see the stuff, otherwise I'd totally be responding.
Okay, Mary says, before writing Meg and Jo, did you visit Orchard House in Concord?
I did. I did. Oh my! When I talk about how it's such a thing of its place, I actually, when I was trying to figure out how long I had been holding this book in my heart, I have a picture. I don't know if you're familiar with the author Suzanne Brockman, but she lives up in Massachusetts, and she's a buddy. And so I have pictures of the two of us standing in front of Orchard House in, I can't remember if it's 2014, 2015. So I probably had gone up at some point as a kid. You know, when you do the Lexington, Concord, you know, graveyards, Boston thing that you do if you grow up in the Northeast. But I was already thinking about writing this story back in I'm going to say 2014. And at that point, I didn't really know what I was going to be doing, but I knew I had to go, and it was amazing. And to see the physical imprint of things, you know, the owl that, you know, Amy or May, you know, put into the wall. It's just really wonderful. So yes, I did, and you can see it online, and you should take the virtual tour.
Okay, well, I don't have any other questions. Are you tired, Virginia? I know it's really late.
Well, it's late here than for me. And I know that we are now sort of at our hour Zoom thing. What I just really want to say is, if you haven't been a Little Women fan, you should read Little Women, because they're such amazing companions. And they've definitely been sort of a roadmap for me on the path to being my best self, and have inspired my journey. And I hope that Meg and Jo and Beth and Amy will inspire your journeys as you become your best selves too. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciated spending time with you tonight.
Thank you so much, Virginia. It was delightful. Yay! Thank you, Virginia.
Virginia, I'm Lori. I'm the one that you worked with, and I'm glad I was able to make it tonight.
So glad. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. I really enjoyed it.
Well, it's been a delight, and I hope all is well with you and yours.
It is getting there.
Well, it
So
was,
thank you.
oh, this is very much been my pleasure. I look forward to a time when we can all be together in real life.
And Virginia, this is Dana, and Mary Beth and I thank you for inviting us and for making our tiny little book club so wonderful. Thank you.
You're my favorite tiny book club.
Yay!
Is this
Thank
Mrs. P?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, she told me about you. Awesome.
So yeah, I wanted to give you guys like a little sneak peek at the oh look, now I can see people. I wanted to give people a little sneak peek at Beth and Amy. Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. So does anybody have anything else they wanted to ask or thought was?
When does Beth and Amy come out?
May 11th.
Yay!
11th. So it'll be right around Mother's Day, which I think is wildly, well, I love this. So yeah, it'll be out. The original hope, I think, was to have it out this year, but as I said, we got to the point with when I was in the writing where I went, this book is not what I thought it was about at all. And so now it's coming out in May, but it's a much better book.
Good. Awesome.
So yeah. Any other worries, concerns? Did you want to kill Mr. Alcott? Did we, Mr. Marge? We're good with all this.
Well, I mean, Virginia, you're welcome to stay for a few more minutes. It's kind of like awkward. I don't want to end the meeting if people want to talk and you want to talk some more. So
I am still, oh, thank you, Mr. I am in the, I went down, I turned in the book September 17th and September 15th and came down with COVID on September 17th. So today is my second day wearing clothes. So
okay.
You look awesome. Feel free to cough.
Thank you.
Virginia's really grateful this is virtual, so she could be here.
Well, and bless Lori and Orem for inviting me. You know, the original plan had been that I was coming out to Utah, and then as it became clear that and then literally, I think the day I was supposed to like be getting on an airplane, the second wave of this horrible virus hit me personally, and I was like, I'm so glad I'm just lying here flat in bed. So yeah. So thank you all for coming. Thank you for being here. I'm going to let you go on with your evenings. I'm going to go have a cup of tea.
Oh, sounds lovely. Thanks again.
If you want to follow up, you know, I'm on social media. I've been very quiet the last week, but I will be back. Thank you guys so
Sounds
much.
good.
You are the best.
You too, Virginia.